Unless Dave has. We're now like we're live.
I should have.
Oh, okay, we're live.
This is Next time. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It's Thursday, February 5th, 2026. It's just after 10:30 and we have the picture of, we're still trying to figure it out.
Oh, it's been confirmed, but it's, Autumn, please, share.
Is it?
It is Camel's Hump from, the view of, it's Camel's Hump taken from Lakefield.
So from Mallett's Bay,
They
maybe it's.
reached out to the football,
Okay, we're solving the mystery.
and they always has volunteers for positive to this.
Yeah, but it was a nice puzzle. We've been having this puzzle on the picture saying, gee, is that New York State across Lake Shore? And really, can you see Camel's Hump this way? And anyway, the things that we have to do with. Welcome, Vic. It's great to see you. And we have Human Rights Commission information in front of us. And so introduce yourself and take it away, please.
Thank you so much. For the record, my name is Big Hartman. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Executive Director and General Counsel at the State of Vermont Human Rights Commission. Thank you so much for having me in today. We're here today to talk about our fiscal year 27 budget request. I do have, I also kind of shared extra documents with you electronically, and I have hard copies if anybody would like our annual report. I have a 2-page summary of our case data and updates from fiscal year 25. And then I have a mid-year summary for the first half of fiscal year 26, just for comparison purposes. Would it be helpful if I pass them around? You can take them if you want them, and if you don't, I'll.
It sounds great. Thank you.
So there's the fiscal year 25 data. And then here's a 2-pager with the fiscal year 26 first half.
And I see that Autumn has posted them.
Yep. The mission of the Vermont Human Rights Commission is to advance full civil and human rights in Vermont. We are an independent commission of state employees. As you may recall, last year, we were allocated 2 additional positions, bringing us up to a total of 9 full-time exempt state employees. So I'll probably kind of jump around a little bit in the slide deck here. So we have 4 primary programs. One is enforcement of our anti-discrimination protections. Primarily, we are the sole enforcement authority for the Vermont Fair Housing and Public Accommodations Act that protects people from discrimination in housing and places of public accommodation. We also have jurisdiction in the area of state employee discrimination complaints. We also are actively involved per our statute in attempting conciliation or settlement of any discrimination complaints that are filed with our office. And we are tasked with educating the public about our anti-discrimination protections and advancing proactive public policy on civil rights. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see the list of our current employees. Yes.
Can you just give a quick explanation of what the 5 commissioners do, what their role is?
Absolutely. Yes, we have 5 commissioners who are appointed by the governor to serve 5-year terms. They meet roughly once a month. Sometimes we skip a month, but generally they meet about 12 times per year. And at those hearings, at those meetings, they primarily are tasked with reviewing our staff's investigative reports that were completed in the month prior. And they conduct informal hearings in executive session where the parties to each case that got completed that month are invited to say why they agree or disagree with the recommendations in our investigative report and answer any questions that the commissioners have. At the end of each hearing, the commissioners vote in the public session about whether or not they find reasonable grounds to believe that discrimination occurred. If they find no reasonable grounds to believe that discrimination occurred, that's basically the end of our involvement with the case. But if they find reasonable grounds, then the case remains with our office. We are then tasked with attempting conciliation again. And if we're unsuccessful at settling the matter, we have the authority to file an enforcement action in court where the Human Rights Commission is the plaintiff against whoever we believed engaged in discrimination.
Not quite quasi-judicial, but above advisory.
I believe we would properly be characterized as advisory. Even the Supreme Court has said in the last couple of years that we are not engaged in quasi-judicial functions. That would be more like something like the Labor Board, where they're actually taking evidence and taking testimony, whereas our commissioners do not do that. It's really an administrative process designed to ensure that our civil rights laws are enforced and that complaints are investigated, hopefully avoiding litigation in those cases.
Yeah, have you ever had a case where they have voted no, yes, and then your group has not followed through on their recommendation? Like they said yes was discrimination, and then you chose based on facts or whatever you felt was the issue here. Not to go to court.
Absolutely. That has happened historically more than it's happening now. We did not have a full-time litigator position for the first 35 years of the commission. It was solely the task of the executive director to make those decisions and bring cases to trial. So we just didn't have the resources to take all cases to court. Now we do have a higher rate of litigation, but even in the last couple of years, there have been instances where we have declined to file a lawsuit in court. It's discretionary. So we make that decision based on resources, the merits of the claim, other, factors involving parties, but also the complainant in those cases gets a full copy of our investigative report and all of the evidence collected by the investigator. So it's a good tool for them to go and hopefully find their own attorney if the HRC isn't going to be pursuing it ourselves. And sometimes if folks do have an attorney and they've already filed in court, we'll make the decision not to move forward with our own litigation because we feel like the matter is being addressed properly.
Thank you.
That was a question I had, actually.
Okay.
They may say, yes, something's happened, but things could get settled as a result of that.
Yes. But as we sit here today, we have approximately 15 cases that are filed in court right now. And our senior counsel, which is the litigator position that was just created in fiscal year 23, oversees and is the lead attorney on all of those cases.
16.
15, I think, as of today.
Thank you.
A couple more on the way, a couple more in the midst of settlement, which is kind of the way it is all the time. As you may recall, last year, we were appropriated additional funds for a full-time intake coordinator position. That position, I was able to hire someone who had previously worked at our office and was able to literally hit the ground running on day one. It was amazing. And I handed him like 100 open inquiry files on his first day.
Whoa.
Welcome.
He came back the second day.
Yes.
That's great. Wait.
What is this nature of the cases? Say you get 15 cases going to court, what's the nature of it? So workplace, what's the process? Just general.
Most of them are fair housing. They're fair housing complaints, either involving primarily folks with disabilities who believe that they were wrongfully denied a reasonable accommodation request, and then we have like a sexual harassment in housing case. We have some cases based on racial discrimination in housing. Then our other cases, we have two cases that involve state employees having discrimination complaints. And the rest are public accommodations. These range from service dog cases, a retail shop that denies someone access because they have a service dog, as well as school cases, students who have been discriminated against in public school.
Both of them are housing.
Bulk housing in litigation, yes. And litigation fair housing does tend to be more than half of our overall cases at a given time. This is a slide that just summarizes our 3 types of jurisdiction. I'm not going to go too far in the weeds here, having respect for the time that we have allotted today. And here's an overview of our HRC process. Intake is where we now are grateful to have a full-time employee, although that employee is absolutely struggling with the backlog of intakes. As I've told you before, we don't accept every complaint that Vermonters would like us to investigate. We just don't have the capacity. And I think in my mid-year summary, as of the end of December, I had declined around 40 cases for investigation in the first half of the year. I've declined probably about half that since the beginning of 26. I think I've already outlined our investigation process that leads to a commission meeting, and then our options after a determination of reasonable grounds. I did do a quick slide for you about our stats for fiscal year 25. We are continuing to accept more complaints each year that I've been director. This is coming into my 3rd year of being a director, and we've continued to increase the number of new complaints as well as increase the number of closed investigations. And we are very proud of that, and that is the result of our staff working very, very hard. We've also significantly reduced the average age of our cases at closure. When I was first talking with this committee in fiscal year 23, we had an average of 649 days for the age of an investigation. That's almost 2 years. Now we've gotten that number down to about 1 year, but it's still a very long time for many people to wait to find out whether or not their claim is valid or whether they were wrongfully accused of discrimination.
Last year, the last 2 years, you actually asked for more staff. We were able to find 2 positions last year as a compromise. You've had an increase, does the increase in complaints or what you're taking on a result of more cases coming forward or more cases that you're accepting because you're squeezing by with the capacity that you have, if you're already over capacity staff? I mean, are elements of discrimination growing noticeably for your portfolio? I know that legal aid lost federal money and you're carrying those more directly than before. So all of which, does that add up to you need more staff?
Yes, we are continuing to see a need for increase in staff. Last year, I was asking committees to approve us getting 8 new positions, and we got the 2, which we desperately needed. We also got another, so I talked about the intake coordinator. We also got a 4th staff attorney investigator. Again, I hired someone who had worked with us before as an intern. I hired her as a full-time attorney. Right after she took the bar, she immediately received a full caseload of cases that no one had worked on for many months because they were in this pending status with no investigator assigned to them. The more investigators we have, the more cases we can accept. Everybody has a full caseload as of today. I'm reluctant to take on new cases when my staff feel they are at their capacity, and we don't want to see case age increase, right? We talked about getting to 366 days for our average. We don't want to have that go back up because we've accepted too many cases. So we are requesting an additional staff attorney investigator as part of the fiscal year 27 budget to enable us to continue to take more cases and address the gaps we are seeing now, both with the deprioritization of civil rights enforcement by the federal government and the lack of funding to organizations like CVOEO and Vermont Legal Aid, who would often do a lot of initial intake and referral to us so that our staff wouldn't have to be doing as much of that initial intake. Legal Aid would commonly send us a draft complaint of someone they had done an intake with. We are not seeing that anymore. Instead, I think folks are calling us cold And we're also not getting referrals from HUD. I'm not sure what they're doing these days, but it doesn't seem like they're answering the phone. So folks are just having to come directly to us, which is just an increase in how long folks are waiting for an intake decision from us. And I'm still making that decision on a regular basis to decline more cases than we accept based on resources.
And so, I just want to point out, we took testimony from legal aid, how they lost money that was COVID era related money that was the bulk of the funds that would be working in tandem with the human rights commissions. I just want to make that clear that the federal program ending and not continuing and comes back and affects us this way by putting this commission under more duress.
Right, well, in addition to the 189,000 that HUD owes you and is gonna pay for work already done that they have approved.
Yes.
So that's,
Yes, but Vermont Legal Aid also has not received their funding from HUD.
right.
And that would also supplement some of their fair housing intake and referral work. But just to be clear, Vermont Legal Aid would represent complainants who have cases with us. It would not, they do advocacy on behalf of complainants, and that is not what we do. We do neutral investigations of those complaints. Most complainants in our cases do not have counsel. They do not have attorneys representing them. And it makes it very difficult to settle a case with somebody who can't get legal advice. We can't give them that legal advice. It's just a lot more labor and burden for those complainants to have a case with us when they aren't represented, while most of the respondents, landlords, and businesses are represented by counsel. So there's definitely an imbalance in power that's resulting when there's no availability of legal aid to represent complainants in our cases.
And then Lynn, and then Dave, and then Marty.
So good job, clearly reduced going 2 years to 1 year. What do you want to get in terms of closing cases here?
We
What-
would like to see.
Realizing, you're dealing with the court system here too, so that just could delay things.
We aren't dealing with the court system. These are the age of cases is through our administrative process.
Just overall.
So our goal would be to finish cases within 6 to 12 months so that our average is lower than a year. When our average is a year, especially our public accommodations cases, our school cases, and our employment cases are the cases that are much longer than a year on average to close. Our rules envision that we will be closing out cases within 6 to 12 months. And we are generally not able to achieve that goalpost. HUD has always required or expected a certain percentage of cases to be closed in 100 days. That almost never happens. That's just not realistic.
Kind of remembering that figure at some point.
Yeah.
Last year. Thank you.
Okay, Lynn, and then Dave, and Marty.
Okay, you have very good statistics. You've made great progress.
Thank you.
You're trying to get more efficient.
Yes.
What do you attribute that success to, with or without those extra positions you did not get? I mean, you got 2. Sure, they were a help, but what else do you attribute that to?
We did streamline some of our processes since I became director. We took on a case management system that we had never had before that is making life easier, especially on the intake and investigative file side of things. But also we simplified our investigative reports so that they were easier for investigators to write, so that we could really be able to make sure that each investigator realistically can close 1 or 2 cases per month. That's the goalpost that has not been able to be done. When I started as an investigator in 2021, it was very hard to complete an investigative report of a complicated case. And, even after your investigation was done, it would take a couple months to write it. We were just writing a lot more in those reports. So we haven't cut short or cut corners with how we're doing our investigations, but we have simplified the reports that we're writing to conclude those cases based on my feedback from what other agencies like ours in other states were doing. When I shared with them some examples of our investigative reports, they were like, how are you guys getting anything done? And so we have simplified that process, that investigative report writing, and I think that that does help a lot. This year, we were also a little bit more stable with our staff. We had turnover when staff are constantly getting new cases and feeling backlogged all the time and under that kind of stress, you're going to have more turnover. So we're hoping that we will be stabilized with our team that we have right now for the next couple of years, which would also lead us to having, being able to close more cases. When one person at our office leaves, like, a lot of work comes to a screeching halt, and it's a lot to onboard somebody new and teach them everything there is to know about the role.
So using a template or a lean process reduced your turnover, probably, most likely.
I mean, I am now the most senior employee there, and I've been there 4.5 years. We just hopefully are going to be stable where we are now.
Yeah, good luck with it.
Yeah, I'm doing the best I
However,
can.
you're working smarter instead of harder.
We're trying to. Yes, but we are feeling like we have to work harder right now. You know, civil rights are under threat. The federal government is no longer a partner with us in doing civil rights enforcement, and there's more need than ever. So we are absolutely working harder.
Okay, I'm mindful of time. We've got Dave and then Marty, and
I'll be very quick. Thank you.
Yeah.
How big is your backlog?
Right now, as of today, all of the cases that we have accepted have been assigned to investigators. And I would say our oldest case is under 2 years old right now. So it's a significant improvement. When I first came as an investigator in 2021, I was handed cases that were 3 years old. So I would just say we have large caseloads for each of our investigators. And the backlog is really on the intake side of things, that we have a lot of folks waiting for an intake process and waiting for a decision about whether we will accept their case for investigation or not.
Okay. Is it in your annual report or in terms of the number of people over a year? I'm trying to get a
Yes.
sense if all the backlog was gone mysteriously, could you, with your current staff, maintain the annual flow that comes in?
I think I would still be having to make decisions every week to decline cases because of resources.
Okay, so when you decline them, there are some you say, yeah, this is likely something bad happened, but I can't chase it?
No, we say we are not able to accept your complaint based on our current criteria for acceptance. And that doesn't impact your right to file a lawsuit independently, which we know is very unlikely to happen.
Later, thank you.
Just a clarification on the slide, you have 62 new complaints compared to 59, which is an increase, but not a lot. Are those complaints that you have decided to work on, or
Yes.
complaints coming in the door?
No, those are complaints that we accepted for investigation, assigned an investigator, and are actively being worked on. Yep. And you can see 62 new complaints, 53 completed investigations. Every year we accept more than we close. And so it keeps kind of building up.
Get a standard triage system for intake, deciding which ones you want to take and which ones down. Just a standardized kind of criteria.
Yeah, we've been able to refine that a bit this year with the addition of a new intake coordinator. Last year, I was doing more than half of the intakes myself. I was conducting the investigative meetings. The intake meetings. And now we are, streamlining and refining that with a full-time intake coordinator. But more folks are contacting us every day. So we never get ahead. We are always behind. And always feel we wish we could get back to people sooner. It's often a couple weeks before we can really take a look at a new, what we call an inquiry. But we are continuing to explore how we can improve our process and serve more folks.
your budget looks standard. We saw it. So I don't know that we need to go through the ups and downs specifically. I know that you already moved something up into personnel and salaries, the new intake person. So that was kind of the big change.
Right, the ups and downs, when we have a new position created, they put it in the other personal services line.
Right.
So then they spread it out over the upper line items the following year. So that's why it kind of looks like we have a big increase in our salaries, but we don't. It's just coming out of the other personal
We
services.
see that, we know that's how they do it. I'm wondering where you said you would like to get another person. Is there something in writing here that says what?
Yep, the second page of my memo, summary.
Turn it over, okay.
But just on the ups and downs, I do want to point out that there is an up in our vacancy turnover savings that the governor is recommending. Last year, we were struggling to deal with a $25,000 vacancy turnover savings. We tried to make up that in the Budget Adjustment Act. It came in so late, we had to realize that savings. And the way we were able to do that is we held the Director of Policy, Education, and Outreach position vacant for about 5 months. And I did those 2 jobs for the second half of the legislative session. So this year, in order to meet the governor's target, we are being asked to increase a budgeted vacancy turnover savings to about $65,000 total. There is not a reality in which I can achieve that vacancy turnover savings unless somebody voluntarily leaves and I again choose to not fill that position for many, many months. That is going to be a screeching halt in some very important work that is currently done by an employee. We do not feel that it is wise or realistic to predict that we will have a vacancy turnover savings of that magnitude in the next fiscal year. So on the bottom of my memo, I have proposed that be added back into our total appropriation, as well as the funding for the 3 additional positions that we are proposing to be added to our staff. And I also want to point out on the ups and downs, because we aren't able to count on any federal dollars next year, the governor's recommend actually results in us receiving less in fiscal year 27 than we have received in fiscal year 26 by $27,009. And while the cost of everything goes up, it's really difficult to envision how we could serve the Vermonters that are seeking our services, accomplish our mission, meet the needs of this moment with even less money than we have this year.
Last question, and then we have to finish.
Are there any mysterious ADS charges?
The ADS charges are built into the projections. That was last year, but we dealt with that.
And I'll work, it's part of my portfolio, so I'll work with Big, really taking what you provided and reducing it to what legislators can understand.
Yeah, so I think you you explained it clearly.
Okay, great. And I'm happy to come back in if there's more questions as you are moving forward with your overall budget.
Yeah, and thank you. I appreciate the offer, and Tom is the liaison too, so we can also follow questions. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
And committee, we're going to go straight to the Green Mountain Care Board.
Anyone
Here?
really goes-
Thank you so much.
Well, you can talk to us right here. Hey. Well, is that your joke for the morning?
I don't make jokes, I make comments that might have humor.
It's a stop and think.
Yeah. True. Oh, and Emily, if you want to come to the table, that would be great. And yeah, just bring chairs up, however many you need.
Right.
Good morning.
While they're getting settled, next up, we have the Green Mountain Care Board with us. Then after that, we break for lunch. Goodness, short morning, we started late, right in before lunch, and then 1 o'clock, we'll have the Defender General's office in, and then VPIC is in after that, so. And a few other things after that, but that's where we are. So welcome.
Thank you.
You all want to introduce yourselves for the record and take it away.
Good morning. My name is Owen Foster, and I'm the chair of the Green Mountain Care Board. And I'm Emily Brown. I'm the Executive Director of the Green Mountain Care Board.
I'm Jean Stetter. I'm the Administrative Services Director of the Care Board, which means all things back office.
All the numbers and everything. That's great, thanks. So we have your presentation and do you need to share screen or?
Yeah, we can share the screen. I'm joining the.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do we have a question before you start?
Sure.
Can you just explain for us, Emily and Owen, just the relationship between the board and the executive director? I mean, I can make an assumption based on nonprofit work, but just, I know it's different for the board and for the Green Mountain Care Board.
Yeah, good question. It is different. So the way the Green Mountain Care Board is set up, there is a chair of the board, that is myself, and then there are 4 other board members. Each of the board members has 1 vote on any regulatory matters that come before the Green Mountain Care Board. So our decisions on hospital budgets or insurance rates, that's a vote of 5 people. The statute provides that the chair of the board, myself, has control and runs the office. So everything about our staff, everything about our financial decisions, all of that is ultimately the chair's responsibility. The chair, through statute, is allowed to hire an executive director, who's Ms. Brown, and the executive director I think of as essentially the CEO of the organization. It's not really ultimately like a board as you'd normally think of it, where we go to quarterly meetings or anything like that. It's a daily job. We're there every day. But Emily is essentially the chief executive, really. Emily, you want to?
No, that was it. Happy to answer any more questions.
And so you said you're there every day, so you are, again, we just talked about the human rights commissioners, which is a different function than it sounds like what this board is, but it's, thank you.
John?
Not too down into the weeds here, but what do you manage outside of what Colin's doing?
So we have a staff.
Oh, I know you do a lot.
She does more.
I know.
So we
Generous,
have,
but you do a lot.
yeah, we have a staff. When we're fully staffed, we're going to be about 40 people. So I manage
You manage
and
that.
I manage the staff, the work, make sure that the staff are meeting the priorities of the board, our regulatory processes, making sure that those are being run effectively and efficiently in compliance with our statute. I work very closely with our general counsel. I'm also an attorney, but not practicing. So it's really a lot of the day-to-day, but I also help make sure that the work we're doing is in alignment with our statutory and internal mission. Yeah.
Okay. I have a presentation. I think we'll have additional questions about projects and successes and things like that.
All right. So as we said, we're Owen, Emily, and I'm Jean again, just to refresh our names. If you look at the budget factors that you're considering, we did not have a request as part of the BAA. For the FY27 base budget, we met the governor's recommendation, and we have no FY27 budget request. So that's
refreshing.
the over.
Good to see you.
So if you're,
We'll have questions.
of course. So this is part of a slide that Finance and Management has requested. Our mission, we're focused on access, affordability, and quality and healthcare. And in general, the statute that governs the vast majority of the Green Mountain Care Board spending is that there is 40% general fund, which is matched by 60% bill back. What that specifically means is that we charge the insurers, hospitals, and when accountable care organizations for the pleasure of being regulated by us. The additional 2.9% other special fund is we have 2 positions that are funded specifically by the evidence-based fund. And their focus of their work is prescription drug regulatory costs.
Tell me the name of that fund again.
It's the Evidence-Based Advertising Fund.
Okay.
It's 21912, if you like numbers.
Yeah, I have the special fund list. That's good to know. Okay.
And
Our other one is 21937. That's our main bill application.
question, so is the Build Back Fund does that have any relation to the other taxes we charge hospitals?
Provider tax.
Provider taxes.
No,
Provider taxes are all Medicaid oriented, and so they're paying a different fee or charge or whatever we're calling it for the Build Back Fund.
correct. Specifically focused on the Green Mountain Care Board's, funding the Green Mountain Care Board's work.
So how do you decide what the build back number is for?
So it's what we earn. So it's our, we actually do it based on prior year actuals. So for the funds, the general fund dollars that we spend that qualify under the bill back, so not certificate of need, not like the healthcare advocate payment, which is a separate statute. For those general fund dollars, those are the dollars that we use to show that we earned. We spent 40%, 60%. So that shows the pool of money to be allocated among the regulated entities. And then there's math in the statute for the percentages.
Who pays what percentage of the total? I seem to remember we tweaked that statute.
We tweak that, yeah, we tweak that. And then, so within the buckets, the hospitals are allocated by net patient revenue. So it's basically like a market share equivalent. And then the insurers are by earned premiums, made comprehensive major medical in certain categories. So that's how it's allocated.
It's okay. And then, but the general fund, so is it based on time at all? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, when you say you've earned it, is that sort of based on time spent with these entities or?
So we have done it a variety of different ways over the board statute, a board time. What it is now is we've earned it by spending general fund dollars. So for a fiscal year, we spend, let's say, 40,000 general fund dollars. And that means we can charge back for that, as long as it meets the criteria, we can charge back 60,000.
So I'm just wondering how you decide what is general fund before you do the bill back. I think there's a step before somehow, because you said, you know, you're using the example of 40,000, but how do you get to that number? How do you decide what's general fund?
It's the budget that you approve. The
The
legislature.
budget assumes the bill back,
Correct.
which assumes a certain amount of general fund.
Yes.
And so how do you get to the general fund? Not
Uh,
making any sense.
I think, so I think the example would be if the legislature and the governor signed a budget for us as $40,000, that allows us to bill back 60. If you gave us an $80,000 budget, we'd bill back 120,
Okay,
So that's the ratio, correct.
right?
okay.
Or.
So you're moving out $100,000 total, 40% is general fund, the other 60% bill back.
Okay, great.
Or a little tiny bit special.
It's not an hours based, how much time did you spend on UVM? Correct.
Yeah.
What are you spending the money on?
Well, we can,
Go ahead.
go ahead.
The majority of the money is spent either on our 40 employees, health benefits, retirement benefits, all of that. And then the additional majority of the money would be spent on contracts and contractors that we use for reporting to the legislature, data that we have to use to provide to the federal government as part of the agreements we have, transformation, system-wide transformation, those types. So I think the one that probably most people are familiar with is the Oliver Wyman report that reported on the state of the healthcare system and had some recommendations. That was around $1 million. So $1 million of our budget went to produce that.
And you spend a lot of time reviewing hospital budgets. There's a lot of regulation is how a lot of your time is spent.
Yeah, and another easy example is rate review. When the insurance company comes and says we need 15% more rate, we have actually the whole deep actuarial analysis that happens. We don't do that in-house. That's an actuarial firm, a national actuarial firm that we pay about $300,000 to perform that work.
Okay,
Do you believe you have the administrative capacity, the staff capacity and resources to make a determination whether there are enough administrative savings that could be achieved throughout the healthcare hospital system that might have a material difference on premiums? Do you have that capacity?
Let me make sure I got the question. The question is, can we perform an analysis that looks at the entirety of the hospital system to determine how much administrative excess spending there is? Part one.
Yes,
What is the administrative savings achievable across Vermont's hospitals?
correct. Do you have that ability?
Well, there's a lot of nuance of what would be an administrative savings. There would be a lot of debate as to what should and should not go. I think a lot of hospitals would argue these administrative costs have a good output. Nonetheless, there's a prioritization of what you're spending money on. It depends on what kind of quality the report would be or analysis would be, because it'd really take a hospital by hospital analysis and then a second layer of like, how does the whole system interact? I would say that directionally speaking, yes, we probably can.
I was looking, just a follow-up.
yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I was looking at the 990s of the critical access hospitals. And I was surprised, I guess, by the difference in wages for CEOs from a high of 550,000 annually to a low of, I believe it was 167,000. Now, keep in mind, a 990, that may not have been a full 12 months because I started it in September. But in any event, if anybody looked at them quickly, there was quite a variation, and I understand that reducing those to some type of level may not move a needle at all. But do you do those kind of deep dives and ask those kinds of questions of hospital management as to why they're doing what they're doing?
Yes, we do. We do dive into the administrative costs and the budget hearings. It's something we ask about every year to try and find an opportunity to reduce costs where we can. We do take a pretty hard look at executive compensation. If I were to go to like the bigger number, so if you took a critical access hospital CEO salary made of 550 down to 350, it wouldn't materially move the needle. That is true. I actually heard an interview on BPR yesterday. They asked a question of an executive. Well, what about your salary? You make $1 million, whatever it was. I actually don't know what the salary is. So whatever, it might be 500,000. And they said, well, it doesn't matter if I get paid that much because it doesn't impact the premiums. But my answer to that is, well, then should the governor make $1 million because it doesn't impact the tax base? Should the care board chair make $500,000 because it doesn't impact it? Like, I don't think that really justifies the answer. My response to all of this conversation is really whether or not we're getting value for that money. Is that hospital run really efficiently and really effectively in terms, is it really expensive? Because it's really expensive. I would argue the hospital CEO could do a better job. But the way we think about administrative costs, if I were to tell you the big numbers that I'm looking at, thinking about, the truth is most of them are at the health network or UVM Health. They're the biggest, they have the biggest operations. What you really look at is like the Population Health Services Organization. It's about $28 million a year now. That's a big number. And we do ask about it. What are we getting for that $28 million? The ACO, that was about $15 million for many years. What are we getting for that $15 million? I would look at the big numbers, the big buckets, and then question very hard what we get for it.
Thank you.
Okay, speaking about what's going on at Fletcher Allen or whatever they call it now. S-126, we passed that last year. We inserted a team in there to go over what's going on there in terms of their costs and try to help them learn to be more lean, I guess maybe would be the way to put it. How has that worked? And, you know, I read in the paper, everything with Brattleboro is that they are now, they're all financially unstable right off the bat, other than Fletcher Allen. But Brattleboro seems to be extremely unstable. How is S-126 working, and are you doing that, or how does that fit into this picture?
Yeah, so S-126 was unconnected to, I think what you're referring to is the board through the board and UVM agreed to have an outside team help UVM. And it was through a settlement that the board negotiated with UVM. UVM exceeded its budgets and we could have gone to court, we could have fought about it. Instead, we got together at a table and said, let's figure something out. And we put in 3 experts, really great people, to help provide oversight over UVM's operations. So that's not part of the statute, but I would say it's going exceedingly well. I would say that there has been cultural change at UVM. I would say that they are looking at their operations in a different light. When I hear them speak, they're very cognizant that their prices need to come down, that they need to be part of the solution to our affordability challenges. Some of the things that they're working on right now, they put out some RFPs to get some experts in to help them with what should the UVM health footprint look like. There was a time where it was growth, 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 acquire everything, a lot of things in Chittenden County. And now there's a question of, well, we can't afford that footprint. The footprint is too expensive for them to run. So what can be jettisoned and done independently or through an FQHC or elsewhere? So they call that the Project 2030. What's a reasonable expectation for UVM's revenue in 2030? And historically, this is what happens with insurance rates too. Everyone builds up from the bottom. Let's build up and then, oh, look, we need 20% more money. That's what UVM did. But now we need to take a top-down look and say, your revenue, realistically, if we can afford it, is going to be this. What can you do underneath that? Okay, some of it's got to go. How are we going to do it? Right? So that's what the main project that's going on. The other one is provider productivity. We found, to represent the Yakavoni's question, a really deep dive we did on administrative costs was into like how much of the doctor's working. And we got data that showed that it was really actually quite low. There's benchmarking and their productivity, number of patients they saw was exceedingly low. That costs a lot of money because you have to hire locums and patients can't get in and have access. So by pushing on our budgetary tools, we said, you got to tick that up. And that's something that the liaison team is working on as well.
And I will extend, the way I understood this, that bill is that this was going to be applied to other hospitals sort of as needed. Or potentially, was the outside person coming in and telling this independent hospital and their board. There was controversy about that.
That was a different bill. That was H 482. I think what you're referring to is the observer bill. Like the board was given authority to put observers in at hospitals.
Yes, yeah.
We've never exercised that authority. We could have and arguably should have on Brattleboro. Brattleboro gave us data that was inaccurate, wildly inaccurate. And we weren't able to make budget decisions because truly the numbers were not correct at all. And that would have called or allowed us to put in an observer. Brattleboro's board took some pretty immediate action to remediate the problem, so we didn't exercise that authority.
And so the other thing is that these are all board functions, your board making these functions, working within these statutes. So whether it's the budget process or the CON, this is like another added responsibility to them, to you and to your oversight reporting.
Correct. So if we were to appoint an observer, there would have to be a board hearing. We'd have to make a number of findings and our lawyers would have to write an order explaining why we did what we did. So we are pretty judicious in using some of these stronger authorities. So we have subpoena authority. We've used it once in the 14 years of the board. Observer authority, we've never used it. And yes, it is more work.
I'm going to continue here because we have Wayne and then John.
So, when you discussed, what are you getting for the money, we're talking effectiveness. And then when we talk about the doctors not having as many patients, we're talking about efficiencies. So in terms of looking at the whole, I don't have any kind of concept of where the big dollars are. Always usually personnel, I would assume. Then you also got structures, buildings, hardware, and all that stuff. And, fixed costs, or you have more fixed costs than what you should have, that kind of thing. Do you have a good idea of where to look for those efficiencies?
I think we do. The problem in Vermont's healthcare system, as I see it, is the healthcare system we have can't be sustained financially. This has been something that's pretty widely recognized. There's no silver bullets of efficiency that the board can go and grab and not have dramatic impact on the system. So people often say lower the insurance rates. Well, that would mean 2 things. Either 1, Blue Cross is in worse financial position, or 2, the hospitals won't have enough money to maintain what they're doing. There's no easy trade-offs here. We have reduced spending at hospitals by a couple $100 million in the last few years. So a lot of those efficiencies, I think we have grabbed. Is there a lot more left? I don't know. There's some, but probably not a ton. The problem is that the system, what we have, is inefficient. Like that whole care delivery system is inefficient. That's what Oliver Wyman found. That's what the Act 167 work and the AHS's transformation work is meant to do. What I mean by that really is that in Vermont, much of our care is concentrated in hospital care. That is the least efficient place to deliver care that you possibly can. Part of it's reality, part of it's like how we've just come to be as a state, but we really need a much more robust system of primary care, mental health care in small practices, which you can't just flip a switch and have them. It takes time.
I was hoping that rural transformation money that was coming would at least have us on a path this way. So one time, obviously, the thing is, that it could help transform the system. It's a kickstart to, getting that primary care fixed and maybe getting care for people that are staying at home or something so they don't end up in the emergency room. Could start cutting some costs. But we don't, you folks should know a lot more about how those things work.
I think that's, sorry, I interrupted you. I think that's exactly right. I mean, we were just given a huge opportunity of $200 million a year for exactly this. And to the state's credit, we're ahead of the game because we have spent 3 years studying the system and now know what the problem is. And now we have $200 million a year to do it. The question is really being able to implement that $200 million a year quickly and well, and then following it and making sure that we're accountable for it. When we got all the COVID money, effectively it became bailout money for 2 years. What we don't want to see is that this money ends up effectively being bailout money. We want to make sure it's driving these other outcomes that we want.
And you have seen the report, their grant documents, and you know the projects that they're proposing, that we have no authority in the legislative to change anything. It is what it is. So do you think that the projects that they have identified that they're going to do are going to help us get there?
We are not that closely involved in the selection. Actually, we're not involved in the selection of the projects. And so we have not studied granularly how they're going to work and whether or not we think they'll be effective.
So, yeah, hopefully you'll take a look at what the projects are. It'd be interesting to get your, did they, I'll add you to the list, Lynn. Did they, consult with you at all when they put together the application?
Yes, we had some involvement and gave some feedback during the course of the application process. And now they're in the budgeting process where I don't believe we've had input.
No, and I do want to highlight too, we were asked by AHS to put forward a project essentially to help provide accountability and transparency.
Yeah.
So for those who may not know, we have a great data team at the Greenmount Care Board that works on providing transparency around our healthcare system and how care is delivered, pricing data, claims data. And AHS asked us to create a data infrastructure project, which would allow us to develop more internal infrastructure. So we would be less reliant on our contractors. As Chair Foster mentioned, we currently rely heavily on consultants for a lot of our data work. So the hope being with this grant money, I believe the total project was about 14 million over the 5 years. So about, if I'm doing my math correctly, a little over, is that
little under 3 a year.
Correct. To provide staff augmentation, to build up our data infrastructure in coordination with ADS, and with the hope being that the Greenmount Care Board will be able to provide data to show actually the impact of the transformation work and actually see how the work is impacting access, quality, affordability.
Great. So that made it into as one of the projects. Okay.
Exactly.
So the Joint Fiscal Committee, on which a couple of us sit, is meeting tomorrow to accept the grant, and we're doing it publicly in room 11. I don't know if you've already heard about that, but anyway, we'll be getting details about that because we're going to have them present the whole thing before we accept the grant. And we want the world to understand that the General Assembly has absolutely no ability to change anything in that cooperative agreement. The only thing we have authority to is to accept or reject the grant. So.
And I have a question. Is the timing that it's yay or nay? It's not nay with some changes potentially.
We can't do a thing. So we wanted to be ourselves really transparent about understanding it and having more people understand how this is going to work. So we will be doing that tomorrow at 12:15 across the hall. So John, you had a question and then Lynn.
Just share that they came in to see us to say, we got this grant. I know that we remember they had to go back and readjust. Expect they would get that much. Right award here, so they had to make some adjustments on that. So I'm curious as to what that ended up being to the report. So my question, so thanks for being here today. You all work many hours on lots of things over time, you know, for sure. We appreciate your help with all the hospitals. It's hard work. My own personal experience, you know, serving on a board here, trying to figure out how do we, you know, balance all this. So one of the balancing things I know that came out of the Wyman report was to kind of think about ways that maybe some services or support could be perhaps spread across hospitals here in lots of different ways here. And our two hospitals in the northeastern part of Vermont, you know this here, we're working together, NBRH, North Country, sharing one position here, trying to help each other, but they have to be careful about how much they work together on those things. Any trust things could come into play there. Does that make sense? I mean, we want to kind of work together, kind of share some services. There's only so much we can do. One hospital may be a little bit less in volume. Orthopedics, for example, can't handle all the inquiries that may be sent to a different hospital, which we try and make up that slack the best we possibly can, because they only have so many providers doing studies based on size. So those are things I know that, and it's not just our two hospitals, others are looking at that stuff there too. So I just want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, that is a challenge.
That move, it's a challenge.
Well, and I think there was addressed, I think it was addressed in one of the bills last year. There's state action immunity from antitrust violations, which means if the state is involved and the state directs it, it's not an antitrust violation. AHS is the coordinating entity for the state on transformation. So my understanding of the antitrust exemption would be that if AHS is involved in the discussions, in the meetings, and directs the action, it would not be an antitrust violation. I have worked with VAWS. They asked me for some, I'm a lawyer, practicing lawyer. I gave them recommendations for antitrust counsel that could provide compliance. Where that stands, they would have to answer it. I do not think it's appropriate for hospitals to, without the state, negotiate and slice up the pie. I mean, because what the incentive would be, okay, I've got high prices on this, you've got high prices on that, I'll take this, you take that. And that wouldn't be good for the system.
Right.
So having the
Because they
state,
understand that part.
yeah, of course, so having the state,
Service.
right. So you can get around the issue by having the state.
Okay, I have Lynn and then Dave.
Okay, I just want to ask about the ACO. Do we still have an ACO?
It closed December 31st.
So that's outside your port. You don't have to deal with that anymore.
Not that one. There are other Medicare only ACOs. So we do regulate other ACOs still. That one
Are they anything like the animal we had before in terms of money and, or how does that work?
No, but there's more of them. But I would say that what is required from a regulatory standpoint is a lot less.
Okay, and the second thing I wanted to ask, you don't do anything with nursing homes, or do you? It seems to me like at some point the POC did.
Yeah, we do not. Not in my time. I'm trying to think if there's some nuance in the law where maybe there's a theoretical.
It was shifted to AHS.
To AHS.
There was a role we had and it was shifted to AHS. Probably like 15 to 16 timeframe. Don't quote me on that.
A while ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dave?
I don't mean to put you in an awkward position commenting on other things going on in state government, but I'd appreciate your insight as to what's important enough to preserve. We have a program called AHEC, which you may be familiar with, but it essentially is a loan forgiveness program for providers, which is it's not just being level funded, it's being recommended to be defunded. And guessing, which I shouldn't do, I don't know if it was ever a therapeutic dose, whether there was enough of it to make a difference, but it seemed like a very important part of our portfolio. Given what you said about the importance of primary care and how AHEC helped with the loan forgiveness to many primary care physicians, would you Would it concern you if that were eliminated? Would you recommend that somebody try to replace it with something? Because of the importance of primary care on the entire system? Or is it such in the scheme of things, you let it go, it's not big enough? Do you have any reaction?
It's a good question. I'm not intimately familiar with the program or the details around it, but generally speaking, so look, I'd say two things. One, loan forgiveness for physicians who are, no matter who they are, they're going to be higher paid in our state as compared to a lot of other people who work very hard as well. So there's some equity there as to whether or not somebody with a college degree and going to grad school should get forgiveness as opposed to many other people in need. Putting that aside, I think that supporting primary care providers and encouraging more primary care providers is really a priority. It's something we should encourage. The only nuance I would say is that I think that it should be encouraged as to independent or FQHC primary care doctors, not hospital-based primary care doctors. The reason why I say that is because, one, there is some tax benefits to being at a hospital for primary care doctors because they're nonprofit. Whereas if you're actually at an independent, you're not nonprofit. And that's actually a little inequitable because the hospital-based ones make more money. Then second, the non-hospital ones, they charge a lot less than the hospital-based ones. And then two, their referrals are not in the closed loop hospital system where they're getting ancillary services at higher prices. So they might use an open MRI or Green Mountain Surgery Center at a higher rate than just using like UVM's MRIs that cost more. So I would distinguish between those two sets of primary.
Oh, very interesting. That's very independent. You're done, Lynn?
Yeah, there's another issue, and that is the federal government limiting the amount of forgiveness or the amount of loans that you can take out as a professional. This is the nurses were here this week about that for graduate degrees. But the real problem is your medical, dental. I understand why the logic in DC would be that if you can borrow more money, this is for all college, we can charge more. And then that increases the debt, Except that when you're in something like graduate school for a healthcare provider, whether it's an OD or an MD or a DVS, the point is that those places cost $100,000 a year. Even state schools cost $75,000, $80,000. I mean, you can come out with anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 worth of debt. And how are we going to attract? I mean, the only people who are going to be able to afford this is people who have a lot of money, or they're going to have to take in even more debt. I mean, I don't know if that's even on your radar.
It's not something in our particular lane.
May not be in your lane, but it may be your concern that you're looking about accessibility.
There's a lot of things that are concerns that are way outside of our lane. I mean, the changes to Medicaid, the changes to Medicare, like
Yeah.
we can't get into everything out of our lane.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just like people want our legislators to solve all their problems.
I know, yeah.
They want us to fix national health care. Go ahead, John.
So I'll ask you a question, something that's in your lane, because.
Oh, look what I did.
Okay. Right here. I just know that the reference-based pricing, provided some implementation updates on that here, and that's a lot of work. And we try and figure out how that's going to work here and what the impact will be just budgeting wise with hospitals once that becomes, fully in play here. So as you're going through that process of things here, just give us an example of one thing that you're looking at, well, or a couple of things here. Could be general here, it could be a categorical here as well. But as you're moving through that, will you work with the hospitals here? You probably have plans to do that when that does fit into their budget model. How would that look for them?
Yeah.
Here, what might they have to make adjustments with to come up with what you set for guidelines for all of this?
Right.
Which helps us a lot.
Yep. So two things. So reference-based pricing, just to remind everyone, essentially what it is Medicare tries to pay around 100% of the cost. That's their goal. Might be 98, might be 101, but it's right around 100% of what it should cost for a service. Medicaid tends to pay quite a bit less, probably more like 60% of what it costs. What hospitals effectively end up doing is charging commercial more to make up the difference. Where Vermont sits on the commercial prices vis-a-vis Medicare as a multiple of Medicare is really, really, really high. Some of our hospitals exceedingly high. What reference-based pricing is trying to do is to drive that number back down, which will give us some rate relief for our insurance. I'll just give you an example. UVM is, I don't have the number in my head, but should actually, I'll say hospital A, because I actually don't know the numbers off of it, but it might be around 300% of Medicare. What reference-based pricing will do is say, hey, over time, you need to get more around the national norm, which is more like 250. Okay, so you got to reduce your prices from 3 multiple to 2.5. And our job is to figure out at what cadence and what schedule that will happen, because we don't want to be too disruptive. You're not going to do it overnight because the system, as we talked about, is not there to take these patients elsewhere. And your question was like, how do we work with hospitals on that? Already our system, when we do guidance, which we're doing right now, we tell hospitals effectively, hey, we want to see you come in at a 0% rate increase this year. And you need to make a budget that fits this. We work with the hospitals all the time on doing that. Reference-based pricing also has a stakeholder engagement process where we get feedback. The rub in all of this is our hospitals can't survive with less. That's the rub. So everyone talked about reference-based pricing, but they kind of ignore the fact that that means the hospitals are not going to look how the hospitals look. We're going to have service and delivery changes because they can't give us what they give us currently at lower prices. Or to some degree they can, but like not as far as I think the state will need to go for the price.
The concern there too is we don't want to reduce access for certain services that we provided for whatever period of time.
Completely true.
Yeah.
There's two pieces.
So
that's the rub.
Challenge.
The other piece is when we think about access, like sometimes we're thinking about just in the hospital-based system. And when a hospital makes access changes, it's in the news and it's something that is in your mind and you're hearing about it. But when the FQHC makes access changes, we don't hear about it. When the independent primary care makes access changes, we don't hear about it. We barely hear about it when the Howard Center does, right? So it's important to keep in mind that if we're giving all the money over here to prevent access changes, we're actually having access changes over here that we're not even aware of. And that's actually what's happened in the Vermont healthcare system, in my mind, in the last 10 years, is we've made sure we don't lose access here. We've actually cost a lot over here. That's consolidated the system into a hospital-based delivery system.
And I use the hospital example because that's what I'm most familiar with. But
Yes.
About the larger picture.
We all are.
Right.
We all are.
Yeah.
And we just don't want to, put ourselves unintentionally in a spot that all of a sudden something's not there. It's to figure out where to go to get X service, whatever it might be.
That's why the whole work is really like the cadence, the scheduling, and giving the system time for the Rural Health Fund to help us build these other systems.
Do you have an indication what that might look like? Now, you're still doing a lot of homework here, right? I'm trying to figure this out here. With this new money coming in here, which would help here tremendously, lots of different ways.
Well, right now we are looking at how we're going to design the reference-based pricing system. And there will be a lot of thought, I think, in the next 6-9 months of like what the schedule looks like, how fast the rate reductions are. We are doing it. I think we're doing reference-based pricing already in a lot of ways, because by keeping UVM is one of the higher priced hospitals that we have. We're keeping them pretty low or even reducing their prices. And as we do that, they're getting more in line with national norms. Or even this year, if our guidance ends up being 0, that everyone else is going to go up 3-4%. So we're getting closer to average just by staying flat. And that hopefully prevents the disruption and allows for everything else to get developed as we go.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Back on the primary care doctors, of course, you said the hospital's nonprofit status reduces their costs, their income taxes that they're paying, state and federal income taxes. Is that where the discrepancy would be? So that the guys working for the big hospitals make more than the others? Is that the primary?
Yeah, it's twofold. Yes. I mean, this might not be uniform across every set of primary care providers, but generally speaking, hospital-based primary care providers' commercial prices, what Blue Cross pays, are higher than non-hospitals. And then 2, the amount that those physicians get paid, I'm comfortable saying, are generally higher than outside of the hospitals.
Again, I'm trying to get to, do they have a tax benefit because of the nonprofit status? They
Yes.
don't have to pay so much taxes.
There's a deduction that they can take if they work for a nonprofit.
It's significant.
I don't know the numbers.
All federal or state tax also.
I don't know the detail on that.
The reason why I'm asking, obviously, is, changes in tax, if we really had a deficiency in rural primary care providers, if there was a tax incentive there, then that's something we might be able to do something about. That's
Equal the playing field, yeah.
Yeah, Lynn and Dave.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you also have a utility fee, hospital fee for people who are employed, so they have the docs, and then they have, the hospital puts an extra. Is that a Medicare only, or is that for everything? Number one,
The facility fee,
yeah,
everybody.
so that's one reason why the hospital collects more money. I can maybe afford to pay more. And I'm confused by Rep. Rush's question about taxes. Hospitals don't pay taxes, but they pay Social Security, all the usual salary. These are salary positions.
It's the physicians that get the deduction. The docs on their tax returns.
Deduction of what?
Their school loans, I think it's their school loans, they can deduct the expense associated with the interest on the school loans.
Yeah, I can speak to this because I have.
So, yeah, I can do this offline.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just curious, because independent docs, a lot of them, because payer mix, more increase people on Medicare, aging population, more increase on people with Medicaid because it's been expanded. They make less money and they go out of business or they get hired, they go to the hospital, get recruited by hospital to work. We're able to make a whole lot more stable money than they would in any kind of independent practice. Now, FQHCs are different, if I understand correctly, because they're employed.
Okay, I'm gonna maybe take that part offline.
Yeah.
Keep going. Dave, did you have a question too?
I did. Assuming you had a sufficient increase in resources to accompany any lane changes, are there any areas that you believe should be regulated in such a fashion that might yield the savings we need across the healthcare system in Vermont? Or do we pretty much have it right?
I think we pretty much have it right with two caveats. One is it's really incumbent on us at the Green Mountain Care Board to be very cognizant of those other parts of the system that aren't regulated. And to Monday morning quarterback some of my own decisions and the board's work in the past, that was where we had made mistakes. We essentially took a view of here's what we're doing, here's our budget process. Those other things aren't us. And I know I've said that's not my lane, but those are federal, national. But one of the things we have worked on very hard in the last 4 years is making sure we really understand the rest of the market. I don't think the care board should be regulating the small independent practices. It's too much work. It's very expensive on them. It's cumbersome. But I do think we really should be reporting out on how the rest of the system is doing. I think that's really important. The other caveat I would have to, I think we have it about right, is there's a lot of different cooks in the kitchen working on different things, and it's not necessarily always that well coordinated. So, we're in charge of the hospital budgets. So if we make or let's say AHS's transformation work, if they make a change, it will impact what the hospital has in their budget. So we have to know how that's going to fit. If they're going to put a bunch of money over here to primary care in a rural community, that will change the care delivery. Like all these things interact, and I think they really need to be coordinated. Also, in terms of like administrative expense, I think that there's a lot of administrative expense in how Vermont policy works in healthcare. And I want to speak to this a little bit. The state spent a ton of money on the all-payer model, and it did not work. We did not see the savings. Quality, access, affordability have all been very, very poor during the life of the all-payer model. When I got to the care board in 2022, it was verboten to speak ill of the all-payer model, not just at the board, but I mean like in this building and everywhere. Socially, you were like asked to leave. And I'm still asked to leave. But I think it's really important that we recognize that these systems we have VPQHC, we have the Green Mountain Care Board, Blue Cross has quality, we have the Blueprint, they've got quality, UVM has quality, we have quality. There's a lot of duplication across the system that's really expensive. In the all-payer model, but one, you had the ACO that was $15 million a year. Two, you had the care board's regulation of it, which might have been $2 million a year, roughly, something like that. It's a lot of expense. And as we look at healthcare reform, people love healthcare reform. Right now, if I walk down the hall, I'll talk to someone about the AHEAD model. I'll talk to them about global budgets. I'll talk about reference-based pricing. I'll talk to them about site-neutral payment. I'll talk to them about, all these things. You can't do them all. You can't do them all effectively. And they're all expensive. Even evaluating the AHEAD model costs a fortune. We're going to pay contractors $500,000 to evaluate it. And at the end of it, I don't know that we're really going to know whether it's going to work or not. So all these things have risk and they're costly. And I think we need to get down to kind of the basics of healthcare. Not spend money around healthcare, but spend money on healthcare. And if you asked about administrative costs, I look at this statewide system administrative costs too, including us, frankly.
Thank you.
So, you mentioned the head model, and that was one of my questions. You know, we sort of agreed we'd pursue it, and then we have a new, administration in Washington, and I don't, you know, is there even gonna be an ahead model, whatever?
Yeah, so the board, so the governor and AHS signed it and the board signed it too with pretty heavy caveats. The board, we needed 3 votes to say yes. We barely got to 3 votes. It was a lot of pessimism. The issue was whether or not we're gonna get more money from the feds or less money. It's a cap, right? So why do we want to cap how much money the feds are giving us on Medicare? And the answer was, well, if you look at these very complex projections, there'll actually be more money. And then we'll draw down the delta and we're going to get all this money. But it depended on the trend rates and all these various lines. It could actually theoretically be less money. So really understanding if it's more or less is not that easy to do. The new model, when the Trump administration came, they wanted to renegotiate. And that started, I think, this week.
Correct. It started, we had a meeting with them last week.
So we don't even know if we're gonna go ahead with the head. We don't know if we're gonna move
Yeah,
forward.
there will be an amendment to the existing agreement that all parties will have to agree to.
And it added a new layer of complexity and then now it's an ACO-based model again.
Oh,
So the question was, if there was a delta before, which I think was an open question, could we draw down that money and take it and redistribute it?
right.
Maybe. But now you have the ACOs that will be involved in that drawdown of the money. So now the question is there a drawdown? Do the ACOs take it? If the ACOs take it, how do we take it back?
Right.
So there's just more complexity.
Sounds worse and worse. Okay, so TBD.
Yes, TBD. And then the other thing I'd add with the all payer model, one of the reasons why we didn't leave was because the way it was structured was there's blueprint and SASH money in it. We essentially got $10 million a year of free money. So it was really, really hard to ever execute the model because you would be hurting blueprint or SASH in their funding if you were to exit. And people,
That's right. And I don't think SASH was put in the governor's budget this year, and that's $5 million.
right.
It's another conversation.
But it's hard to exit these models when somebody's getting money out of it.
I know. So, yeah. Jean, did you have something you wanted to say?
Just follow up. So Chair Foster was talking about the, $10 million for blueprint and SASH. That's really clear. And in this building, that's a line item, that comes through very clearly. What's less visible is the costs and all the departments for reporting on the model, for, all the other costs. So there are, the 10 million is the benefit, but where do you look across?
It's a gross number, not a net number. Basically.
Number, not a gross.
It's a net number, not a gross. It's a net number, not a gross. So
You don't have the other stuff in there.
I know.
It goes with it.
It's a gross. The amount that blueprint and SASH got was gross. We didn't net out of that all that we paid.
sorry.
That's why it's a gross. It's a gross number, yeah.
Okay.
I was thinking
Yes.
the inverse.
You're getting there in different ways. Did you have one last question, Wayne? You're good. Okay. Really appreciate you all coming. Thank you for not asking for more. It's going to be a very hard year. It's already going to be challenged. So appreciate all the work you do. You have huge challenges ahead of you, but I think we have great people in the job to do the work. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Be well.
Okay, so committee, 3 minutes till lunch, so you have this time, and then 1 o'clock, meet you. I hear the Defender General, he's only here for 30 minutes, so we're gonna start over at 1.